مساكين. وعلى مالكم مكان الفاسدين، رجعوا لإيران، رجعوا لإيران الذيولة. كفو
ارجع استشهد دير بالك يا ولد، استشهد يا ولد، دير بالك على كيفك على كيفك. لا ارجع شوف السحب يا ولد، السحب يا ولد، دير بالك يا علي يا علي. لا حد يخاف يا ولد، لا حد يخاف يا ولد، لا حد يخاف يا ولد. محمد فاتت العالم، محمد هذا الباب وجو تبعهم من السرايا تتلو
قوات السرايا السلام ترد على قوى قمعية للنقاش هنا في
Good evening. Today is August 29, 2022, and this is the 113th episode of New Paradigms. I'm your host, Sargis Sangari. Today we have a special show specifically concentrating in the escalating violence in Iraq. My honored guests today are Representative Walter Blackman, who represents the 6th State Legislative District in Arizona, and also Mona Oshana of the Mauna Kea Show. Representative Blackman is the first Black American African Republican in the history of Arizona to have been elected to the Arizona House of Representatives. He is a constitutionalist, a conservative, who served in the United States Army for 21 years, a combat veteran with 2 decades of operational and combat, real-world leadership experiences in the U.S. Army, and Mona Oshana of the Mauna Kea Show. Representative Blackman and Mona, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having us.
Representative Blackman, as you saw with what is happening, I was surprised when I saw the tweet today from the State Department on the violence that is taking place in Iraq, and they called for dialogue. And it was initially sent out, I believe, almost 5 hours ago. 19 tweets of the State Department statement on it. It seems that even the State Department isn't even tweeting their own or retweeting their own citing. And also CENTCOM came out earlier today and stated that, the violence is de-escalating. We just got the word just before we had you all come on the show today that the Iraqi army now is going to go in. As for our viewers who don't know, for the past 9 months, there has been a government that hasn't been really established, with Sadr leaving the government coalition itself. Today, the whole thing has fallen apart. You have the Sadrists saying that the Iranian militia is attacking him. The Iranian militia is saying that it's the Iraqi army attacking the Sadrists. And now we're about to introduce a multi-force structure of the Iraqi army with closing on the Baghdad airport, possibly pouring more fuel on the fire, and nobody knows who the military in this case is going to side with, the Saudis or the Iraqis, or whom they're going to take orders from. And with that said, Representative Blackman, I wanted to just bring you in, 19 years, and this is what we have right now. It's an absolute chaos in Baghdad. And I just wanted to take your perspective and see where we're going to go from here. Well, let's go ahead as we bring Representative Blackman, your perspective on this. I know we got a lot of Assyrians in Arizona. That's the reason we brought you guys in, and Representative Blackman. But I mean, you saw what's happening. What is your feedback, input on what's going on?
It's absolutely atrocious. Of course, this is another of many controversies and conflicts that we have seen, as you have mentioned. Thank you so much for having us. Of course, for those of you that know us, Lieutenant Colonel, that you were born in Iran. I was born in Iraq. Iraq has become a den of thieves, has become so corrupt, has become it's out of control. As you said, there is no government. There is no organization. If there was one Saddam Hussein at one point, now we have several mobsters that have taken over, and we see that the people are crying out. And the best example is when we saw a few years ago, and it was a couple of years ago. I've been covering Iraq since the days of when I had a radio program as well, where the people are screaming out for their autonomous independence from Iran and from other regions in the area that want to infiltrate, from Al-Qaeda, terrorism, and of course ISIS. And we see that, again, no one is falling through the cracks more than the people of Iraq, as we see today, that you have, at one point you had Shia and the Sunnis, and you had the Kurds in the north, but you see right now the Shiite itself has broken into two sections, one of which is backed by Iran through the former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. And of course, you have the Saudis right now who are fighting for their independence, who want to be left alone, and who want Iraq to be independent of any influences coming from beyond their borders. And here we see another conflict that may break out, if already. Of course, it's a still developing story, but might go into a very deep conflict that will become a revolution, as some were calling it. And I was listening to the news earlier myself. They're calling it the People's Revolution, because the people are extremely frustrated with the outside forces. And as you said, they don't know which end is up. They don't know who the country really belongs to. And Iraq, again, is fighting for their independence.
No, obviously. I mean, you could tell from what's happening. And Representative Blackman, it's good to bring you back again. I don't know where I lost you in the discussion. This happens when we have live shows sometimes. But the last update we had, I had told Mona, it was that now the Iraqi army is going to be introduced into the city, with the Iraq airport being closed down, and all the southern provinces have been now shut down. Kirkuk is still under the control of the Iraqi government. A lot of people don't know that it's the Kirkuk tower that controls the airport in Erbil. And it seems now that you're going to introduce the Iraqi army into this fight that is taking place, as you have the Saudis killing the Shia militia firing on them. And then who is the Iraqi army going to take orders from? And I wanted to bring you in, Representative Blackman, because I want your perspective. You know, this is 19 years now. It's a year removed from Afghanistan being a debacle, and 19 years of Iraq. And what do we have to show for it, and where are we going to go from here?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your program, and it's a very important topic. You know, the last time I was in Iraq was in 2004 to 2005. And I was actually in Bakuba, and that is in the northern part of Iraq, from my memory. You know, we trained the Iraqi army, and we were able to give them equipment and to make sure that they had the resources they need to sustain themselves. And the problems that we saw when we were over there while we were training the Iraqi army is that the breakdown in their command structure once it got to the user level. And when I say the user level, once it got to the company commands, we saw that there was a breakdown in communication, breakdown in resources, breakdown on who's going where and what orders to follow. And as I follow the news today about what's going on in Iraq, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of a replay of what I saw when I was deployed over there, and how the Iraqi army has to respond to these different types of situations. It's a fluid situation. The commanders on the ground know best. However, those commanders need to get their direction from someone, and it needs to be someone in from the Ministry of Defense to give them their marching orders, because if they don't, they're just going to continue to see chaos on the ground.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We knew as of this past year that we saw the Russian elements in northern Iraq, and we reported from the Near East side of the house. And at the same time, we knew that you had China, very influential, starting almost 2 years ago. They started teaching Mandarin Chinese to the Kurds in northern Iraq. The only other issue we have right now is that some of those Chinese leads that are operating in northern Iraq are tied to the People's Liberation Army, which is the Chinese Communist Party military force structures. And I don't know. I mean, I can't even, I never would have imagined that after 19 years it's possible that Iran wanting to make sure that it has a chokehold on Iraq may actually introduce or bring with them the Chinese Communist Party elements with their military force structures inside of Baghdad. I mean, and even today is for another topic, but I mentioned earlier in our discussion that, Bangladesh is going south. From a foreign policy perspective, and when you're looking at geostrategic policy, is there anything that you think that we can do right now to at least be able to achieve some normalcy when it comes to Iraq itself, or is it too far gone given everything that they're dealing with today?
Well, I don't think it's too far gone. However, the question that needs to be asked is this going to slide Iraq into a civil war? And if that's the case, if it does slide into a civil war, the question that military leaders in our administration need to ask is, can they afford to put America back in that type of situation? We just got out of Afghanistan. You just said it. We've been dealing with Iraq for the past 20 years. And do we want to get entangled into a civil war? Being placed in the middle between these two sides right here, we need to make sure that the forces on the ground are solid. And they know what they are going to do. However, I believe that this is something that the UN needs to step in and try to play some peacekeepers in the middle of the factions to prevent a civil war, because that's where we don't want it to go. Because this, if this turns into a civil war, Iran is going to benefit from this, and they are just waiting on the sidelines just to go in and to pick up the winnings. So that's why this is something that the UN really needs to look at, and it should not turn into a United States action where U.S. forces are on the ground refereeing, as we did when I was there in 2004 and years following.
No, I don't know how we're going to be referring anything. I mean, it's pretty much far gone. I mean, there was a tweet made by this State Department today on the violence. They called for dialogue, but only 19 retweets of their own tweet and communication piece on what's happening in Iraq, which means even within the State Department, they weren't even interested in what they were saying. Mona, I know you mentioned earlier that, we had one Saddam Hussein, now we have multiples.
Mhm.
Look, I think we all agreed that Saddam would have to go from an American perspective, geostrategic perspective. Look, he was paying the Palestinians to kill Israelis in Israel. His nuclear weapon, capabilities, although they were kind of frozen on hold, were still advanced enough where even Israel had to take a shot against them. You had, ISIS, or I should say at that time Al Qaeda. Now today ISIS, Al Qaeda was actually being, living in Iraq under his watch, some of their leadership. So it was time for him to go, but we didn't have a plan to do anything about it. For us as Assyrians, we both being Assyrians, we go for 1.5 million with everybody involved from the United States, all its military capabilities, European Union, NATO, and all our allies even from Asia, from 1.5 million to almost 150,000 left now. What do you think? I mean, you've been involved in these dynamics. Did you ever thought that there was at least a plan that might have been that the U.S. may have had for the region, or do you think that there just was no plan once we went in and replaced Saddam?
I think there was a plan. The strategy didn't work in the beginning. And we've often said that when the liberation of Iraq in 2003 happened, I think there should have been a lot more strategy and a plan of action to understand the elements that was involved in Iraq. Iraq is made up of many components, many strong ethnic groups that have not melted. And so those elements and those components were not studied enough to know what would the uprising be. And the uprisings came from, as you can see, the Shiite sect in itself are split into two. And of course, you had Saddam Hussein, that was Sunni, that had controlled the whole region, the Kurds, the Shiites, and you name it. As Assyrians, of course, we always, as Christians, of the Assyrians being Christians, we always seem to fall between the cracks of any conflicts that happened. And when the Allied forces were notified that the Christians would in fact become the victims, unfortunately, as much as we enjoyed and we were happy to see the liberation of all Iraqis. Nevertheless, there were one ethnic group more victimized than the other. And again, I was reading that once again, we've got 19 years of conflicts there. And if we study back to what exactly happened, the people complained about the one madman, the one dictator named Saddam Hussein, who under his ruthless leadership did not have a voice, did not have any human rights, of course, were dictated, and life was as miserable as possible. And he constricted a whole nation into bondage. And a lot of people will say they went into Iraq and didn't find weapons of mass destruction. And I've always said Saddam Hussein himself was the greatest weapon of mass destruction. And we see the conflict that's happening right now for the Iraqis. And I encourage the Iraqis have been complaining about not having a voice. Again, we see this current conflict happening as a result of one thing that they have gained, which is the elections, to have the elections. And yet we have in the last 4 or 5 elections that have happened, of which, of course, I, as a expatriate of Iraq, and my family and those of us that escaped Iraq were fortunate enough to be able to vote. But unfortunately, our voices have gone nowhere. And we see this current Muqtada Sadr's conflict right now, and this new conflict was as a result of the election. And I'm reading a article right here from CBS News, which says Iraq's government has been deadlocked since Sadr's party won the largest share of seats in October parliamentary elections, but not enough to secure a majority government. He refused to negotiate with his Iran-backed Shiite rivals, and subsequent exit from the talks has catapulted into the country into the political uncertainty and volatility amid intensifying internal Shiite warring. So in this, again, Lieutenant Colonel Sangari, we see again, as a result of the one thing that the people of Iraq gained, which should be used as this hero that's with us today, Representative Blackman went out there as an American and fought for the people of Iraq to have that right to be able to vote. And here we have the election system being monopolized and being corrupted. And here we are with another conflict as a result of the election.
No, you're right on point on all those issues that you brought up. It's a reality of where we are today. I know, Representative Blackman, you mentioned about the UN having a more of a involvement in Iraq, but even as recent as just today, you've had now senior officers retired talking about the possibility that we may have to go back to even Afghanistan and have some kind of a force structure there. And look, anybody who stood on stage and said that, we had defeated ISIS, ISIS never left. ISIS is an ideology. Al-Qaeda never left. It's an ideology. We never learned how to fight between those 6 inches of your, between your eyeballs, the ideology at all. So they were always there. We
Yeah.
just, kept them down. If we are now talking about possibility of going back maybe to Afghanistan, and I think more of it was asked a month ago, and I said the possibility might be that we may have to now counter the Chinese Communist Party, which would give us leverage to go back there and pressure them as they're expanding, especially with wanting to go into Taiwan. What you think is I guess I'll use this term, the red line would be that you may turn around and advise the commander in chief to say, now we have to send American forces back into Iraq in a larger number. What would that be for you?
Well, first of all, I mean, I don't think we should draw a red line. We know that the Obama administration, they did that, and look where we're at now. We saw what Biden did. He pulled out of Afghanistan and left some vital equipment behind, Americans behind, and we lost our strategic footing in Afghanistan. We're talking about the Chinese and then their play with Iraq. They know that we're not ready to go back into Iraq, and when we have commanders in our military saying that we may have to go back into a country that now has had a foothold in that country, when we're talking the insurgency, has had a foothold in that country without U.S. presence in Iraq for years, and that is going to be difficult just to get in, just to get a foothold again. And then the capabilities that we lost in Afghanistan, the night fighting capabilities that we lost, that's going to also be a mess. So, while these folks are saying that U.S. troops may go back into Afghanistan, we might have to get in the middle of a civil war in Iraq. We're talking about, our country's young men and women that are going to have to deploy to these countries. And it is not the same when I went in 2004, because it was a country, and as Mona said, it was a country that was ran by a dictator. And everything was pretty much under control under dictatorship. So when we went in 2004, it was difficult. However, we were able to establish an American presence there to protect the community and protect and build an Iraqi government. Right now, it's such chaos in both of those countries. We would actually just be throwing our men and women into a furnace fire. That's why I'm against sending U.S. troops into Iraq at this point. And I'm against sending U.S. troops back into Afghanistan. It is just a nightmare waiting to happen. And I want to kind of just touch on when I was there in 2004, I had an opportunity to actually be at the first elections in Iraq. And when what I saw during that first election, and we saw men and women wanting to vote, wanting to exercise their newfound freedom after being lifted from the yoke of Saddam Hussein. Now we have Al Sadr, who is there, who was in the background playing kingmaker. And it's my belief he's kind of instigating some of this stuff by his not actually helping out and making decisions to stop this madness that's going on. So I would very much like to see American troops not enter back into those two theaters. I understand life has been lost in Iraq because of the recent events. However, we don't need to continue to send American men and women into harm's way when these types of things have happened. So this is a job for the UN, and that's something that I would stick to.
Um, I guess I'll ask a question for both of you, Representative Blackman and Mona. 19 years in, we saw what's happening 20 years in Afghanistan, what's happening in Iraq. Lesson learned and an approach for U.S. foreign policy. What is the biggest mistake, Mona, that you think we made from a person who knows Iraq when it came to where we are today? I mean, we can't put everything on the Biden administration. I mean, you've had other administrations that came before them, and look where we are today. But what's the biggest lesson learned that you would maybe say is the reason why we are where we are today?
Of course, I would be far from me to speak militarily. We have you, of course, our heroes that have actually sacrificed their lives on the battlefield, and here you are again sacrificing your time and effort, of course, in America to make America a better place to be. But I would say choosing, we always have heard of America or the Allied forces choosing the best of two evils, or choosing the best of any evils. And I think that has become a strategy that has worked against us. When we had bin Laden fighting against, Saddam Hussein himself was a choice of two evils. And it turned out that Saddam Hussein was not a choice at all, and had of course, decimated an entire population. And Iraq has many disciples of Saddam, and so we might think that Saddam Hussein is dead and gone, and but he's really not. There are a lot of disciples. There are a lot of people actually worse than what Saddam could have ever have done today. As to think that anything worse than the Hitler totalitarian government of Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party, but here you have a multiple factors that have made a mistake. So I think analyzing and involving the people on the ground and listening to the people of Iraq. I think the one thing that we needed to do was listen to the people, and not enough was done in Iraq. Afghanistan might have been a totally different story, but in Iraq, you had a lot of educated, a lot of informed, a lot of people that were either living in Iraq or had escaped as a result of the brutality of Saddam Hussein. For example, if you could even look at the soccer team in Iraq was abused and it was defeated, and it was expected to win soccer games. So not listening to the people who could have taught us, I think, a great deal. Having analysts and having experts, political experts and war experts would have been wonderful. But I think listening to the people would have been and understanding. Again, I come back to the components and the ethnic groups that make up, because you have the Kurds in the north having grievances against Saddam Hussein and what was going on, and you had in the central government the Shiite and the Sunnis, and of course the Shiites were completely decimated at that point, and were not they were stifled for many years. And so to hear from the people themselves, and today we have a revolution of the people. So and I agree with Representative Blackman in saying that I think it's not a good idea to send any more troops in, because you have 19 years and how many billions of dollars that were spent. Today we would call them for naught. Today, we would describe them as if they were for naught. So many lives, so many of our sons and daughters' lives were lost in Iraq. And what do we have as Americans who sacrificed, even though we are expatriates of Iraq, but nevertheless, we are American, we are Assyrian Americans that understand and value every life, and not just those that you've got America going into Iraq as strangers, giving their life for strangers. And there is no greater sacrifice than that. But we have Iraqis still suffering today and still speaking the same, where you have Iraq after 20 years of conflicts and wars and influences of other countries and the help and the aid of all of the people. You still have Iraqis don't have electricity, don't have water, don't have food. They're living in the times of cavemen. So you've got Iraq, one of the richest oil-rich and other resources in the world, living like a third world country or a fourth world country, whatever you want to call it. It's just not right. It's not real. with as much resources, as much rich as Iraq is, for the people to be living impoverished that way, where you have young people going to school for nothing, standing in the streets, no jobs, and for Iraq to be in the present chaotic is truly a shame to the government. It's a shame to all those that have said that we will change Iraq and Saddam Hussein is gone. Saddam is alive and well, because the people are still under the oppression. And again, no other victims, because the governments, as we hear and we know, and evidence has been shown, that the officials have been enriching themselves and hiding their assets in foreign countries, while Iraq looks like what you are showing on video today. It is truly a shame.
No, it is a shame, and it's a reality of where we are today. Representative Blackman, same thing I would ask again. I mean, 21 years, you've had experience. You know, there's some things that I thought I saw that others didn't see. Is there something that you saw that you think that the U.S. government or systems just did not see? Is it an institutional issue that we keep on repeating the same mistakes, or is it something that maybe none of us have talked about as of yet, or you haven't heard anybody else mention?
Well, first of all, Colonel, thank you for your service. I wanted to mention that in the beginning. I do thank you for your service. I think the mistake we made is that we didn't listen to we didn't listen to what we did in the Desert Storm. General Colin Powell said when we went in the Desert Storm, we get in and we get out. We go in for victory and we get out. And we are not the military should not be used to build as a nation building tool. And that's what we used in Iraq. When we went in 2004, 2003, 2004, the initial invasion, and then the subsequent years after that, we transitioned from a combative unit to a nation building organization. And that is not what the United States military is built for. They try to do the same thing in Vietnam, and we didn't learn our lessons there. Another lesson or mistake that we made is when George Bush flew on the aircraft carrier and said that there is victory in Iraq, and we had another 10 years or 15 years of war left in that. What we need to do, and I agree with Mona, is we should have talked to the people. We should have made sure that we didn't put in puppet governments that were doing nothing other than benefiting from the good people of Iraq, because they're the one who are suffering. We also need to look at the new demographic now. Looking at the video, we look at the demographic of these folks right now, and a lot of these people, I would dare to say, were probably kids during Iraq 2. Desert Storm 2, Iraq 2. And they were, my youngest son, he was 2 years old when I went to Iraq for the first time, and now he's 23. And looking at the video, we are seeing that. So we are seeing a different type of Iraq. It's not the same as we saw. They are still going to have some of the ideology of Saddam Hussein, and they're going to have some of the ideology of some of the other leaders that we saw, or lack thereof, throughout the years. However, this situation is volatile, and it involves just more than Iraq. It involves different countries now, and we are dealing with a new demographic there. And looking at the videos now, the folks in Iraq, they want liberty and freedom, and they're not just going to stay up under the yoke of a dictatorship or fall under the shadows of a former dictator like Saddam Hussein. So it's a different type of war, different type of conflict, and we need to take heed to that, and we need to learn from our lessons from the past.
Representative Blackman, you mentioned, even going back to Vietnam, we didn't learn our lessons, but I would even go back further. I would say even our Civil War in the United States, the Northern military won. They defeated the South. The Southern military broke into an insurgency. KKK was part of it. Lincoln was killed. Grant was handcuffed. And next thing you know, we are where we are today with a insurgency that sometimes I say still it's still operational, I should say, here in the United States. So we've been trying to destroy the Union from day one. But if we didn't learn it there, I don't know how we were going to learn and try to apply fighting against insurgency. Look, I've fought against them. You fought against them, Representative Blackman. I've actually led them when we were fighting with the Syrian military force structures in Syria and Iraq against ISIS. So it's easy to run an insurgency to an extent. It's a matter of just causing the chaos that you are for your benefit. I do want to bring you back home here before we close out the show. Southern border, Arizona, almost 4 million individuals have transited through the southern border, a lot of them military-age males. What are we doing on the security side, at least in Arizona, if the federal government is not doing anything against it? Because these enemies that are manifesting on these battlefields are going to come through. They've said in their statements that we want to attack the United States again. And a lot of them are frustrated because they say 20 years you spent in Afghanistan, look what you did. They blame it on us. They say the same thing now. And I've told our American representatives in the State Department delegation that had gone through to sit down and talk to them on actually the actual date that the Sykes-Picot agreement had expired. And we told them bluntly that, look, the Syrians in World War I blamed the British for what happened to them, and they will never forget it. And don't be the British of this century. And unfortunately, it seems that the United States is going to take the blame for both Afghanistan and Iraq, regardless, and globally what's going to happen in Asia and what is even happening in Ukraine. But what are we doing in Arizona, Congressman Representative Blackman, to counter the possibility of what is coming through that border security-wise?
Well, I can say as a state representative, what we did last year that's actually going to be reflective in this year's budget is that we actually sent $550 million to our southern border to actually seal up that border and make sure that these folks that are coming through are processed not into the country but out of the country. But we need to do more than that. And as we know, the Constitution says that the federal government is supposed to take care and secure our borders. We not only need to build a wall, we need to seal the tunnels all the way from San Diego through Arizona down into Texas. We need to make sure that we are using military-grade technology on the ground and in the air, and then also making sure that we're deploying the right type of National Guard troops down to the border, and confiscating some of the paraphernalia that's coming through, stopping the human trafficking, and most of all, and you nailed it right on the head, we are seeing a large amount of war-fighting age males crossing into the border, and they're going through those tunnels, and they are doing it at a rapid rate to where we have not monitored these folks, and these folks are in our country, and I am sure we have sleeper cells in our country. That's why we needed strong leadership in D.C., and we needed some solutions to some of these issues that are going on. What I see is that when they are blaming the United States for Iraq and Afghanistan, yeah, we need to take it on the chin for that, because we have made some mistakes in Iraq and in Afghanistan, as we all know, and it has followed us home to our southern borders, and we need to ensure that we are not just protecting the southern border and making sure that we are aware, cognitive of those mistakes we made, that we are covering our ports, and we are making sure that our airports are secure, and that folks are not just going to come through any other way to get into our country. The Mexican immigrant that we are seeing coming across, a majority of those folks are coming across for a better life. However, there is a percent of folks that are coming across the border that are using the open border system under a failed administration that we see right now to infiltrate and invade our country. And they are here, and there are going to be some sleeper cells. And then we see this thing going on in Iraq. I would say that we'll probably see an increase of some of those folks coming through our borders to cause chaos in our country, in the interior of our country. So Arizona has taken steps to take care of a southern border, but we need the federal government to step in and do their job. However, states can't wait on the federal government to protect them.
Oh, they can't wait. But one thing people can do is I can go out vote. I know last time we all met. I came to Arizona on an invite to be there when we were both running for our office in 2020.
Yes.
I was running in the ninth year, and you were running for the second. Um, 30,000 votes, I think, is what the count is between the swing states. It really kind of flips the election to where the current administration is in charge. What is it that could be done, you think, in Arizona, possibly, to make sure that at least in the midterm, in a few weeks, there might be a change? And what are some of the things that are expected, you think, from the Assyrian community there is large to might be able to take steps forward to help secure possibly a change in the current administration?
Well, I say, Mona and I was just actually talking about this today. We need to get our Arizona Republican Party back on track and get everybody under the same. And we are seeing fractions, our own type of civil war within our party. And as we are fighting each other, we are seeing that the Democrats are actually infiltrating our party. They are selecting weaker candidates to win in these primaries, and this is across the country. So when they do get into the general race, that these folks will probably be easy to beat, and they can continue to keep open borders. They can continue to defund our police and hurt our military, because that's what the left wants to do. However, it's our party that's actually doing some of the harm to ourselves. And here in Arizona, the Assyrian community, they have done so much for the Republican Party, AZGOP here, helped former President Trump get elected, staunch conservatives, not only at the federal level, but in the state level. They've done so much, and they've just been overlooked like a lot of the other Republican and conservative minorities in the state of Arizona. It's time for the Republican Party to get together. We are all under one tent. We all believe in the same things, liberties and freedoms, and we need to ensure that we are electing the right type of people to protect our state, and also those folks that we send to D.C. instead of sending puppets up to the federal government expecting a change in how they do policy. And it's time for them to listen to the minority communities here in Arizona.
No, much appreciated, Representative Blackman. And I know with Mona being the lead there, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of traction moving forward. Mona, 300,000 Iraqis almost killed since we went into Iraq until October of 2018 when we left, and almost 4,000 plus Americans that died, almost 4,000 contractors that died, 30,000 at least approximately wounded, and we're not even talking about the other numbers that you really can look into the millions. I'll give you the last word on this one, Mona. Where are we going to go? What do you want from us? I know that there's, I got the news recently that there's an Assyrian caucus that might be formed in Congress. I will tell you that I actually sat in 2014, 2015 when we were briefing our congressional folks there. There was an Assyrian caucus, but they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing to help the Assyrians there. I don't know. This new one seems to be more of some folks from the other side of the aisle that are part of it. Last word, what do we need to do? What's your expectation of us? What's your expectation of the representatives? And is there anything that our community needs to know?
Our community needs to understand that we have become part of one of the greatest forces on the planet called We the People. We have been empowered with this human right that we had not had before. And we have a voice today that we did not have, that we were stifled, we were silenced. Now, silence is not an option. So for us to understand that with this power comes responsibility, but not to give it to the officials. Now, we have one such hero of ours Representative Walt Blackman that we have been working with that has been tested and vetted and has proven himself to be truly the hero of the people. Now we have such individuals running in Arizona right now that we need to educate ourselves, not just to understand, to give our voice to that representative, but to hold that representative accountable. I think our Assyrian community needs to understand that not only do we go out there and vote is just the beginning, but to hold our representative accountable and not to depend on that one representative to think that all of my dreams will come true as a result of my vote for that one representative. Because as they go to, and we've seen that many, many times, as people who have come from us that should be working for us go to Washington and start changing and compromising their positions. So we, the people's job on duty, must never end. We must always be on our guard. We must always become vigilant to understand that we have gained these God-given rights, but we must use them vigilantly. We must use them responsibly to understand that things change, and we must stay educated, aware, and we must understand who and what policies, who our vote is going for, and what policies they stand for. Because we cannot vote and go to sleep. We cannot vote and let it go and say, I've done my duty. The duty doesn't end at the ballot. The duty starts when that person that we have chosen gets elected and we actually start. And coming from a country that the worst perpetrator of our pain was the government. I know it is hard, very hard for the Assyrian Christian community to come out and to trust the government. But nevertheless, when we say that we are part of we the people, that means we have a voice, we have a choice, and we have the strength to make a difference. So let us not just vote for that one individual and call it a day and say that's who I'm voting for because that person is going to be the one. Because again, things change. We need to stay aware of the policies. We need to be aware of what's going on around us, and we need to become constantly educating ourselves on the policies. And I do want to mention, and I keep calling Representative Blackman as our hero, is because Representative Blackman lives in a district that has practically no Assyrians. If there are any, they're probably going to school, college over there. But I want to let the public know, and I've said this many, many times, and I give God the praise that we met Representative Blackman. Representative Blackman on the House of Representatives side in Arizona was the hero that spearheaded a effort to introduce a resolution along with other House members that was not just a what is it called, it was actually a resolution that got voted on. And it was passed, and it was for the Semele recognition massacre that happened in Iraq. Now, Representative Blackman has always said something that I always repeat. What he said was, if America denies the massacre of Semele, it would be equivalent of America denying the slavery. And so there is nothing more powerful than to have a representative, one of the greatest countries in the world, superpower of the country, and of course, the great state of Arizona say that, and to stand behind us. And of course, I do want to give credit also to Senate Majority Leader Rick Gray on the Senate side that also passed that same on the Senate version of that resolution. But I want to thank you once again publicly, Representative Blackman, for your diligence, for constantly listening to the people, because we as Assyrian Americans, we as Arizonans, voters here in Arizona, even though we might not be your constituents, but yet you understand what goes around comes right back around, and what you do good to one side of America, it resonates into making a better America. So I want to thank you for that. And you have helped truly encourage the Assyrians to go out and vote. Having you stand with us gave us a pride of we matter in America. And so we want to thank you for that. And God bless you always in your future. We will be right here with you and behind you, endorsing you and supporting you.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate you.
And Mona, just so you know, we also had a Senate bill that was introduced here, Senate Bill 2900, by the current Republican nominee for governor of Illinois. And it didn't just recognize the Assyrian Martyrs Day for 1 year, it recognized it throughout the entire time once it gets signed as a bill, hopefully. And also it gives credit to the Assyrians who served in the military force structures. A lot of people don't know that, AMAT Post number 5 was actually one of the first two AMAT post that was established here in the United States. Actually, it was an Assyrian lead that initially pushed for the AMATs to be recognized. So post number 5 was the second post here in continental United States, and has done a yeoman's work with, Assyrians in World War II, almost 2,000 families that we had here. Representative, each one of them gave one casualty in this, in both Europe and also in Asia, fighting against Japan at that time, and then against the Nazi Germany. So Assyrians have always come to the fold and done their best to represent the nation that they've been in. Representative, will give you the last word. And before I do, I want to also thank you for your service. I went 20 plus years, so I know it's not easy. Sometimes you look back and you're like, oh my God, I've been almost 10 years removed. But, we still stay and fight as much as we can. But you get the last word in the closing.
Well, I do appreciate the both of you, and then Mona, I thank you for those kind words, and I'll continue to fight for your community as I'll fight for all Arizonans, and that's what we need to do. And it's important for our country to realize that we are a big tent, and there are a lot of different demographics that believe in this country, that believe in liberty and freedom, that want to be part of that tent. And we need to get away from the ideal that the Democrats and the liberals kind of push, that the Republican Party is not inclusive, and we are. We are what truly America is. And when we have a community like the Assyrian community here in Arizona, the community that Mona leads, and she's providing outstanding leadership to that community. When we have these types of communities that want to do good and want to be part of the bigger picture, it's important that our state party become inclusive and then use the resources of these different types of demographics and communities. I'm proud to have served my country. I'm proud to have served as a state representative, and I will continue to do so with the help of Mona and her community, and Colonel, with your help. We just all need to get in this together. And again, I want to say thank you for your service to the country, and for what you are doing every single day. And let's just go get them, and let's continue to build our country.
Amen.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. That's all we could do. Reach out and touch what you can, and have as much effects as possible. Again, 19 years in, and we got to see what the payoff on that was. For our viewers who follow us, we do raise money with United Assyrian Appeal, which is a 501c3 I had established to help with our folks in Iraq and Syria. This year we have been also raising money to help the Christians of South Sudan. I was able to go to Kenya recently, came back, and we were able to at least provide some support for the South Sudanese refugees that are absolutely getting butchered still in the country. So, we tell our viewers, if you like the show and what we're able to bring, please do donate. And I do want to special thanks to Fred. I know we were, for our viewers, an hour late today, but we had to represent Blackman and Mona, come on the show. And he was able to again put this broadcast together, and wonderful job as usual. So Sidham Productions, thank you very much for your work you do. And thank you again. God bless you all. Keep the faith, and there's new paradigms.
Thank you.
وعلى مالكم مكان الفاسدين، ارجعوا لإيران، ارجعوا لإيران الذيولة. كفو
ارجع استشهد دير بالك يا ولد، استشهد يا ولد، دير بالك على كيفك على كيفك. ارجع شوف استشهد يا ولد، استشهد يا ولد، دير بالك يا علي يا علي. لا حد يخاف يا ولد، لا حد يخاف يا ولد، لا حد يخاف يا ولد. محمد قادة العالم، محمد هذا الباب، وشوف محمد صلاح تشوف.
قوات السرايا السلام ترد على القوى القمعية للنقاش هنا في